After a crushing defeat last week, UK Prime Minister Theresa May returned to Parliament on Monday to present her revised Brexit deal. The new and supposedly improved version vowed to protect workers' rights, waive a fee that EU citizens currently living in the UK would need to pay after Brexit, and seek changes from the EU to the Irish backstop issue. But a lot of analysts are saying May's Plan B looks an awful lot like Plan A, with critics saying May is in denial over the scale of opposition to her Brexit deal. Parliament now has a week to discuss and debate before voting on the new proposal next Tuesday. Is the UK back to square one? What role will UK lawmakers play in the week ahead? And as the Brexit deadline looms, how much hope is left for reaching a consensus on how to avoid a devastating exit? Joining me for the discussion in Beijing is Professor Cui Hongjian, Director of the European Department at the China Institute of International Studies. From Southampton, UK, Mike Bastin, Senior Lecturer at the University of Southampton. And from Brussels, young Palmowski, Professor of Modern History at the University of Warwick. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Mr. Bastin, let me go to you first. Parliament voted against May's Plan A by a huge margin, the largest defeat ever. Why didn't May deliver the breakthrough Brexit deal her government was hoping for and her country in need?
Well, there are several different factions. The real sticking point that she is trying to focus on now is the backstop and the issue of a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So the Democratic Unionist Party did what they said they would. They couldn't back the deal because of the backstop, and the hardline Brexiteers too. Also, there was nothing on the retention of the customs union, so a lot of Labour MPs voted against the deal as well, and there was a lot of uncertainty. So it wasn't a surprise that it was a thumping, record-breaking defeat, and it's also not a surprise that she's very short on detail now as well, focusing mainly on the backstop only.
Yeah, well, May again ruled out the option of a no-deal Brexit and of holding a second referendum, saying that another referendum could damage social cohesion by undermining faith in our democracy. Professor Cui...
No, I should correct you that she hasn't actually ruled out a no-deal Brexit. She has said that's still a possibility.
Okay.
She's ruled out a second referendum.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask Professor Cui here. Why is she so adamant against budging on the second option, the second referendum?
Yes, I agree with this opinion from Prime Minister May about this option for no-deal Brexit, and also this second referendum. Because as we know, there will be some preconditions for something happen for the second referendum. Firstly, which means that it will deny the result or outcomes for the first referendum. So which means that there will be some very big change for the process for Brexit.
What if people still vote to leave the EU?
So far, according to the survey in UK, just maybe 7 or 8 points. I mean, those people who try to have this, remain in the EU, and then those people want to leave from EU. So I would like to say not yet. There is a very clear difference. So I think that's also a reason why for the government to be hesitant for this second referendum. Because once it happens, which means that there will not be consensus even, because there will be still a split in the society of UK.
Okay. Professor Palmowski from University of Warwick, you have been listening to this. What do you think is her worries about having a second referendum?
Well, I mean, she has said very clearly, as you suggested in your previous question, that she's very worried about the democratic implications and about the social cohesion of the country. But I think it's worth unpicking that. So on the question of the social cohesion, it seems to me there's a real concern about the social cohesion of the United Kingdom if the UK were to crash out of the European Union, because those parts of the UK that would be most affected are precisely those areas that voted for Brexit, and where you would see a huge rise in unemployment and a worse worsening of the economic positions. And if you think about some of the motivations of why citizens voted to leave the European Union, these reasons about being left out of the system and feeling marginalized, these problems would increase and these feelings would increase. If we then think about the democratic implications, I mean, British democracy, the focal point of British democracy is parliamentary sovereignty. Now, if Parliament votes with 230 votes against May's deals, surely there have to be some drastic implications for the UK government in terms of it changing its negotiating stance. If Theresa May is unwilling to do this, then I think that in itself has very serious democratic implications. Finally, I think it's worth recalling that something came to light last week, which is that Theresa May, as an MP herself, advocated that the referendum on Welsh, greater Welsh sovereignty on a Welsh Parliament, that outcome should be reversed, and she advocated that position for years. So this is not sacrosanct, and people can change their views.
Well, after a defeat last week, May was supposed to consult with UK lawmakers to help shape the revised deal, but it didn't seem as if she captured their various concerns. Mr. Bastin, is that your impression? Why didn't she compromise more?
Well, I think she realizes it's very, very tricky. She's not really identified what specific deal, particularly on the backstop or the exclusion of the backstop, would go through. So I think she realizes that it's no easy way out here. What she's trying to do is buy some time, find out, I think, more from the Brexiteers and the DUP, what sort of deal, particularly on the backstop, what changes would allow them or enable them to vote this through, because then she has a chance of getting it through. Once she's got that clear in her mind, she will go back to the EU and hope that they will change their position, but it's very, very difficult to see that working through. She really just doesn't really know what the way forward could be.
Yeah, now Parliament has a week to debate and weigh in on the proposal, and lawmakers will likely hold various indicative, so-called indicative votes, whatever that means, on options facing the country before they cast their next vote on January the 29th. Professor Cui, how much can one achieve in a week? How much can the Parliament do in a week?
I'm not so optimistic about this result of this debate for 1 week, and also the result of the vote. Now, of course, I think the strategy for the government and also for the Parliament is trying to, break down into some smaller steps for the Brexit process, including the indicative vote, just like you mentioned. So now the question is maybe some major focuses for the previous deal is about how about the hard border issue for North Ireland and Ireland, and also how about these future relations, especially the trade and investment relations between EU and UK. But of course, now I think maybe the very, very big possibility is they have to, require the extension of the deadline for the end of March.
Yeah. Well, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn refused to meet May for talks last week, saying that with no deal on the table, the Prime Minister will enter into phony talks just to run down the clock. So, Professor Palmowski, how would you describe the relationship between May and Corbyn and the impact it's having on Brexit?
So the relationship isn't brilliant and hasn't been brilliant, to put it mildly. It is quite extraordinary when Mrs. May lost her parliamentary majority. She didn't then actively seek out to build coalitions with the opposition, or with groups within the opposition, or with different parties apart from the DUP. And that includes, remarkably, also the other governments of Wales and especially of Scotland. And so, having not done that for the last two and a half years, it's very difficult then to jumpstart that relationship that was non-existing within a very short space of time.
Finally, as the situation stands now, if lawmakers fail to agree the plan, Britain will exit the bloc without a deal. Professor Cui, is that what we're looking at? If that is the case, the Bank of England has warned that the economy could shrink by as much as 8%. What kind of pressure do you think Theresa May is facing, and what could she have done differently?
Yes, exactly. Now, I think the bigger question is, of course, it's also a strategy for Theresa May is trying to play a game of timing and also the game of terror. Because once there is no deal, which means that there will be a very, very hard Brexit, and it will give a very, big impact, negative impact on the British economy. Not only economy, and even this movement between UK and EU for the peoples. So I think now the strategy for Theresa May is this, but now, of course, it's a gaming between the government and also the parliament. So it looks like now every party understand what's the very, very big problem for the no deal Brexit. But I am afraid that now, because it takes some time enough, so every party now is understanding and also familiar with this situation.
Yeah.
So once it takes some more time,
okay,
which means more possibility for no deal Brexit.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Professor Cui Hongjian, Director of the European Department at the China Institute of International Studies, Mike Bastin, Senior Lecturer at the University of Southampton, and Jan Palmowski, Professor of Modern History at the University of Warwick. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.